I think Infinity Ward is already kind of taken a bunch of steps forward in the communication department during the MW2 regime. It just didn't really feel that way. They weren't really outward vocal. I think it's very important to be in front of the community and communicating directly with the community. We saw some cultural shifts with Sledgehammer into Treyarch, and now we're finally seeing it with IW for the first time. But the problem is that transparency doesn't happen with the post or with the tweet or anything along those lines. It takes several years to kind of build that trust. IW really doesn't have the currency in the community to really be silent or vague anymore. Start off with May 21st, they had the developer podcast. They introduced the new studio heads. I made a big old tweet about this saying it felt less corporate, more candid, more personable. Especially from somebody who's gone to the studios, you kind of have this vibe on how they are in person. And a lot of times, Call of Duty does like super corporate type of presentations where you don't really get to feel like you know what this person is all about. And I think this was like that first step in them showing candid, more personable side. And I think when you do that, it ends up feeling a little bit more authentic, and it's kind of what the community needs. I don't think there's almost any scenario where there could be too much communications from the developers. Because of the track record they've had, they almost have to overcompensate for that. And initially, when I first saw this in May, I was like, oh man, this looks like very promising and we're on the right track. Then a week later, one of the studio heads, Mark Grisby, ends up tweeting, all will be revealed soon and transparent in regards to skill-based matchmaking and things along those natures, which this is like a big statement, especially when you say all will be revealed soon and transparent. That's kind of a big deal. Transparency is really lacking in Call of Duty. Even when they put out their white paper on SBMM, everyone's like, oh, that doesn't kind of add up. So seeing something like that, automatically you already kind of leap forward and like, cool, this definitely does feel different. So I got the vibe check was confirmed, and it's going to be confirmed a bunch of other times, hopefully. But from that first one is like, okay, definitely a vibe shift. Now, they've continued it. Week later, we're looking good. And then fast forward to this past week, and then we had some other nonsense happen where Call of Duty's main account post something along the lines where, hey, you know what? We're going to carry over the classic matchmaking with a little bit of tweaks because the old ports are so popular right now. We're going to incorporate some of our learnings from classic inspired, and it's going to be in the MW4 beta on the main Call of Duty account. And everyone's like, that sounds pretty good, but I'm a little confused because, like, isn't that what we've already kind of did for BO7? So what's the actual difference? They also followed up with the second tweet, which didn't do anything to add to this conversation. They said it'd be smarter balancing, more variety, mixed level parties, fuller matches, blah, blah, blah. But most people looking at that information didn't get anything out of it. Kind of like, all right, what the heck's going on here? And it really comes down to these things all sound good on paper, and their outcomes, like that we like desirable outcomes, but they're not really explaining how to get there, right? That's the more important part. That is a lot of times the issues with the matchmaking where it doesn't feel organic. I don't remember who said it initially, but there was a phrase that was ping is king, and it was definitely proven that ping is not king several times. So there's definitely reason for the community to have pushback for things like this. This part specifically, these tweets, where the community shift, you can immediately see it. Right when we first get the reveal of MW4 and we're seeing all this information come out in May, everyone's kind of already kind of getting on that hype train. They're like, it does feel different. I think a lot of people did agree with me that it definitely did feel like there was a shift in the studio. And from talking to a lot of people that got to play early or talking to the devs in general, it definitely does feel like there are some things that shifted, but they're still under the umbrella of Activision, and some things with Activision didn't change, it feels like. And there are still some of these restrictions that are leading to pushback from the community. Even Charlie Intel puts out a tweet and he kind of addressed this same thing too, because they say open was classic. This is what the open matchmaking was in BO7. Now there's a new system going to be in MW4, which kind of incorporates BO2 and BO1's matchmaking and learnings from classic to solve those other things that we just talked about, but they didn't say how. And it's inspired by Classic. So it's like they use Classic multiple times, but they have different meanings apparently. And they don't continue the conversation to actually explain what the problem is. And that was 6 days ago that they made that post, I think 6 or 7 days ago. So they've had ample time to put their heads together and figure out how to explain this and be transparent. But that hasn't happened, especially when you have someone like Charlie Intel and a lot of the news accounts that are up to date, up to the minute of everything that happens in COD at every single second. If they're asking, what's the difference? It's a pretty fair question to ask, like, what's the difference? But if they don't know, then who the hell knows? And the only people that have this information is going to be Activision, Call of Duty, and in this specific case, when it comes to Modern Warfare 4, Infinity Ward. And the players have the right to be skeptical with this type of stuff because there's a track record of it. There's plenty of things that happened with MW 2019 where the matchmaking got exposed. People were reverse boosting, blowing themselves up. There was disbanding lobbies. There was connection issues, confirmations of things about map voting that never went through. I think there's a Reddit post from Joel Emsley, which is the art director, I believe. He was then. I don't know if now. I think it's the same. Where they said that you'd be able to do 12-player parties in Ground War, and that never happened. Launch happened, community asked for it, what happened, and then they never really got a public answer on that. It was stated early on, so maybe they were able to do in play testing, but they never said, sorry, the system isn't capable of doing that. That's like a pretty big deal, and there's been stealth weapon tuning that we had all throughout Modern Warfare 2019. It was a pretty big problem. We'd even joke about it in the Warzone side of it, because somebody would find something random that completely broke for some random reason, go in there and test it and be like, yep, they didn't disclose this. I know Exclusive Ace made tons of videos on MW 2019 weapons during that time because of how many undocumented changes there were. Then that led into MW2 with a bunch of design decision issues, the perk delays, all kinds of other controversial systems where you need to level a gun to level the other gun to get attachments for your other gun that you really want to use, but you got to max up this other gun to unlock the other gun before you... Pretty bad problem. And there wasn't like a lot of insider rhyme or reason to these decisions because they weren't transparent then. And it really just kind of like got brushed under. When people complained about those things, they were like, I'm sorry, but that's what we wanted to do and we think it's best. And it's like a pattern of behavior. It's not just like one thing that says, hey, you know what? They did this one thing and now we just can't trust them. You know, it's beyond that. And I know in the past year, we've talked a lot about COD fatigue on the channel, but one thing I don't think we've addressed as much is communication fatigue. It feels like they go in there and they do their marketing strategy. They make these broad statements, questions get asked, and then broad answers get given, not specific enough to answer the actual question sometimes. And then the community is just kind of like left debating. Well, they meant this. Well, I think they meant this. Well, I don't know. It sounds like this. I don't know. And people could just twist the narrative however they want. Big statement, questions to follow up to get a little more granular, and then they make a big response that kind of answers, but doesn't really. So, and this is something that COD has gotten away with for years. They continue to do it. And I think they really have to focus on what it means to truly be transparent. I don't think they need to go out of their way and say, like the white paper, I think that's a little bit too much to just put out there. I don't need their whole matchmaking algorithm. But I would like to see a chart where it says we're going to prioritize ping, and then based off the parties, like succinct explanation of how it's going to work, and explain that sometimes because of this system, you might get weird matchmaking on team balancing or something. Maybe acknowledge that. Something, because I don't think anyone expect just publish the white paper again. That was felt useless because it felt like gaslighting in some ways. I think they should tell us what changed, what specifically changed, what will players actually notice in game. They should have better connections, better bullet registration, something like that would be a good selling point. How open is actually different than this. Like, what did they actually tweak from the BO7 version, which was classic? And although they can't have a large player base, maybe they've sampled this internally because they probably have 200-300 people jump on, and maybe they've experimented with this matchmaking and they've known kind of like how things work, because obviously there's a big range of skill level. Maybe their knowledge of the game is different than the casual player, but there's a big range of skill levels at the studio that playtest this game, and them going into those details would be transparent. Them saying, well, we're kind of going to do classic, but it's a little bit different than classic, but not really classic. So just kind of wait out to see, it's going to be classic. Like, what the fuck does that? Like, I don't know. And it really just comes down to not necessarily just being told everything, but kind of understanding how it will work is a little bit more straightforward, so that people don't jump on the next day when they go, oh, we're testing things out in BO7, and people go, I don't notice a difference, or I notice this difference, or I don't. And it, obviously, it's going to be volatile. The great thing is they had a great start. In May, they had that podcast, and I think they've slowly taken steps being a little bit more socially present. That video series of the ward, breaking down different mechanics of the game in detail, looking at different effects. Like the DMZ video, I don't think hit quite as well because it was spectator camera, but I think they're being very transparent with a lot of the information around the game. But there's very specific topics that are just taboo and not being talked about. Like this matchmaking thing, I think is a big miss, and it does more harm than good for the game for them to just stay silent on it. They just need to rip the Band-Aid off, say it like it is, and then own it and commit to it what the goals of this are, that it's not designed to optimize your playtime so that you buy microtransactions. That's like how the current version works. You get that dopamine hit where it regulates how often you win and all that. Like, they need to like throw that crap to the side, because that just doesn't work. And like I said, the trust will take a long time to build, and hopefully this year is kind of that start, even though I think Sledgehammer kind of set the stage for their studio. Treyarch's kind of set the stage for their studio, and now this is like IW's first crack at it to really get going. Hopefully they are actually transparent in the next coming days and weeks, because we got COD Next on the 21st, I believe, which I'll be attending online. And then we got the beta same day that weekend, couple days off, and then the following weekend. I'm going to figure out if I want to go ahead and try and play on the Switch 2 to see what that experience is like. And then we also have the campaign a week early, so sometime in the middle of October. So let me know what your thoughts are. See you on the next one. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.